Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Ross Raider Wrap-Up, your one-stop shop for all things Richmond Raider sports. I'm your host, Matt Harrelson, of course, alongside with me on the desk, Dion Cranford. Have a good week?
It's been a great week so far.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. And, of course, as I just mentioned, this is your one-stop shop for all of your Richmond sports. Basketball, the big news right now. Of course, with them moving on further into the playoffs. But want to start off first with this past Monday's State of the Program address by Richmond Raider football head coach Brian Till. And we're going to talk about it here for just a few minutes, but we actually took a minute after the program was over and got a couple thoughts, asked Coach Till a couple questions, and here's what he had to say after the address.
You talked about leadership development. Talk a little bit more about what that means for the program.
Well, I think for the program is important because you're talking about so many kids, so many young men, and you're talking about 20 coaches and 160 young men in the program. And to really legitimately have everyone moving in the same direction, we've got to develop some of those young men to be leaders. Also, they go out on the field, none of those coaches are out there with them. So from a standpoint of performance on the field, it's also extremely important that those guys develop so that when they get out there and those opportunities arise, they can continue to move forward and lead our team when those opportunities come. There are also going to be a lot of opportunities off the field when they're together and we're not around. And we want those guys to have positive leadership with each other so they can move forward.
And speaking of being off the field, talk a little bit about the student part of student athlete and how important that is.
Well, I think it's important. Our guys have really attached themselves to that also. It's not just something we say as coaches. Like we said, our team GPA was a 3.19 this year. We got guys attending ACT prep with us. We've got, I think we had 43 guys on the AB honor roll during midpoint of the season. And so those guys have really bought into what we've said with that. And I can't give our kids enough credit on that with us that they've said, all right, coach, what coach is saying makes sense. I want a brighter future. I'm going to work towards those things in the classroom. And they just understand the life after high school.
And to kind of piggyback off that, you also mentioned you guys helping out with Special Olympics, going down to the elementary schools. Why do you think it's important for them to get involved with stuff like that too?
Well, again, I think that the program is going to be over. The football program is going to be over for them as far as the football standpoint at some point. Hopefully for the guys who get a chance to go to play college ball, it's longer. Maybe some guys go to the NFL, that's great. But the reality is a lot of guys, it's going to happen very quickly. So what have you learned? If you learned how to help other people, if you learned how to invest in other people's lives, if you've learned what's important and the impacts you can have, positive impacts you can have, now that's why those things are important. They can see those little kids' faces and light up. They can see the impact they have and have the realization that, part of being a great football player is being a great human being after it's all said and done and learn from the game.
And I know that you talked about how people in the county can get involved, but reiterate that for just a moment.
Well, the big thing for us, they can get involved any way they want to get involved. If you've got a vision and something you want to add to this program, we're more than willing to let you do that. As long as it can run with our overall vision, we're great for that. Obviously, they can advertise in our program, which those dollars go to sending our kids to camp, providing them hoodies, the things that they're provided for football players. They can get involved with pregame meals. They can get involved with helping to paint at the stadium. We got a crew of guys who do that. I mean, there's any number of ways, but the biggest way we want them to get involved is just come Friday night and support the kids and make the Raider Stadium loud and just a different place to play than anywhere else in the state.
And again, that was head coach Brian Till, and we appreciate him taking a few minutes after the state of the program. Now, I know you weren't able to make it, but anybody that was in the house, I've said this several times already, Coach Till is such a great motivator, and he was the speech was emotionally charged, as it should be. I really like the idea, though, of having this state of the program address where he breaks down, what kind of money's coming in. He's very transparent when it comes to where that money's going to be spent in the future, that sort of thing. But just in your history of working with Till, talking to him, it doesn't surprise you at all that he's looking to take this program to another level, does it?
Oh, not at all. I mean, and again, my experience with Till is mostly outside looking in. I'm a watcher. I'm an observer, and I mean, if you really watch him, first of all, he's everywhere. He's at the basketball games. He's at the baseball game. He's everywhere. He's out there. He's not just motivating the football players. He's motivating the athletes at Richmond as a whole, and probably the student body as a whole. I don't know how he interacts with the non-athletes, but I know with the athletes, he's all over the place. He's always there to support them. As a matter of fact, we had some videos from the playoff game with Hickory Ridge, the basketball game online, and somebody pointed out they could see, Till cutting up in the background, clapping and yelling and jumping, and just a great guy, great motivator, and I have I'm not surprised at all that these guys really do enjoy playing for him and working for him, and they have no problem giving 100% to somebody that respects them in that way.
Yeah, and another thing that he's incorporated that I really like is his leadership council, where he allows the guys to pick and choose. We see teams where they choose captains, that sort of thing, but these are guys that represent the team not only on the field but off the field as well. And one of the things that Coach Till preaches is for these young men to not only be outstanding young men on the field again, but also represent outside of the stadium. And I feel like he motivates them to do that, and they follow suit. One of the bigger things that he discussed Monday night, and I want to get your opinion on this as well, was the possibility in the future of potentially having an indoor type practice facility on the campus at Richmond Senior. Now, it's a pretty aggressive thought because it's going to take some money, obviously. It's going to take some time. And, of course, he's working on, getting grants, figuring out ways to raise funds to do that. But, as we've seen this crazy weather over the last, what seems like 10 years, it would give teams that play outside, like football, baseball, soccer, softball, the ability to come indoors and not skip a beat. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on that?
It would obviously give you an advantage. We just look at the past. You just hit the nail on the head. Almost all the spring sports scrimmages, baseball, soccer, has been canceled.
Yeah.
The weather's just not permitted it. It's very likely that some of the season openers for some of those sports are going to get canceled because the weather's looking bad again. So it gives the opportunity to keep those guys fresh. I know that a lot of times in the playoffs. Well, you look at this past season with the hurricane that came through. There's a lot of games that may have been able to been played. Had maybe one team that wasn't affected and another team that was. Those games got postponed and moved out. And if you look at a team like Richmond, we might be playing a Butler or in the future or somebody from Brawley or somebody in Greensboro. And whereas the East Coast might get bashed by a storm. We don't want to be that team that has to miss out because our guys can't practice, our guys can't play. So it would be a great opportunity all around in different sports, and I think it's a great idea. You're seeing a lot more schools in the Texas, Georgia, Florida area do that. So it's not that new or unusual for a school with a big sports program to try to do something.
Yeah,
like that.
And I've mentioned this before on other programs, but. He brought up a school down in Georgia that brought in the football coach. I think it was from Hoover, who's like that's a nationally known high school program. They've won 3 national championships out of the last 8 years, and because of that, kids want to come play football there. And because of that, their families move there. And because of that, next thing you know, there's more money in the tax base. There's more things being built. There's more jobs being created, and I don't see any problem with that. Now, of course. Once the story came out that he was thinking of doing this, people brought up good points. Like, what about this? What about that? We see that with everything. Yeah. But to me, the underlying factor is any kind of positive change to me would be a good thing. And I don't really see necessarily. And again, I understand that there's going to be money involved, and it's a pretty aggressive thought that he's having here. But again, to me, if you could come up with something and have people have a reason to want to come play for Richmond. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, you could have said 20 years ago, where are you from? I'm from Rockingham. Well, how would I know Rockingham? Richmond Raider football.
Yeah.
And people would know. Now, I know we've gotten away from that a little bit, but I think he's trying to bring that back.
Well, another thing you also got to think about is he's really focused on these kids' futures, and he's proven that time and time again. His vision for these kids far exceeds Richmond Raider sports in general. He wants them to have good futures. And, things like that also bring the attention of colleges,
Exactly.
Scouts, things like that. They're looking at these facilities going up. There was a big controversy a few years ago when Richmond wanted to build the scoreboard, the video scoreboard. Those are kind of hit and miss, and they do make money, but something like this could actually benefit these athletes. They can actually get better Whereas maybe a scoreboard, you could argue, where's the benefit to the kids?
Right.
Whereas it does bring in revenue, but where's the benefit to the kids? Whereas something like this, they can continue to work, they continue to play, they can continue to get better, and that increases their chances of maybe getting into a school somewhere.
Yeah, and as you mentioned a moment ago, with all of these scrimmages being canceled, on top of that, you're not, really given much time to go out and practice. Basketball's still going on here, so you can't necessarily go into the gym and practice. So, I mean, at this point, it's almost, I don't know if hindrance is the best word for it, but we're already a step behind other programs that aren't having to deal with this because we can't go out and practice and those sort of things.
Yeah, the good news in this particular situation is kind of the whole state seems to be under the same boat.
True.
So I mean,
True.
we're not really behind anybody else, but it is kind of we do seem to be in that black hole where we do seem to get the weather problems here, and then often have to face off against a team that may have dodged it. So we'll see how it goes. So, but I think it's a great idea.
I do too. And again, you can catch that whole interview again right here on the Sports Show. Or if you want to watch the whole state of the program address, you can, of course, find that on the RichmondObserver.com and on the Richmond Observer's Facebook page. So, as I mentioned before we send it over to Till, that boys basketball still going on, still playing. They in the first round of the playoffs, not really upset because we came in at 15, they were 18, but beat Hickory Ridge 67-59. Xavier Pettigrew with a double-double, 16 points, 10 rebounds. What were your thoughts?
I thought it was a wonderful game. I mean, the guys really played great. It started off looking like it was going to be a Richmond runaway. Of course, Nige came in and did his thing and scored, I think, the first 4 points of the game, and it was really fast. And it just looked like they were going to run away with it. But then Hickory Ridge, that was a scrappy group of young guys, and they really didn't let up. I mean, they were really good at fast break points. Our guys. Once they got some speed on them, our guys really had trouble defending them. The good news, what I did like about how Richmond defending them, I'm talking about the defense, is when Hickory Ridge had to inbound the ball, whether it be after a basket or after an out of bounds or foul or something, Richmond really made them work for it. They had trouble starting from scratch and getting to the net. But if it was off of a rebound or something, man, they were fast and they were getting to the other end really quick. And our guys really had trouble keeping up with them, and I think that's how Hickory Ridge managed to stay in the game. But once again, and I've said it week after week, second chance points were a big factor in this game. Richmond really, really dominating the boards, especially on the offensive side. When they came in after halftime, it was 27-25. Richmond was leading. Xavier Pettigrew scored the first 6 points of the second half, all on putbacks, all on offensive putbacks. Yeah. He just really got under there and just manned his way to them balls several times, laid it back up and in, and gave Richmond a kind of a cushion that they really never really let go of.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Nige, he had 13 points on the game. Caleb Hood, 10. P.J. McLaughlin, 9. Rod Newton had 6. The number that stuck out to me, though, in addition to those 16 points, 10 rebounds by Pettigrew, he also had 5 blocks in the game. But the team had 10 blocks. That seems like a lot for me.
Well, I'll say this: when Hickory Ridge kind of got into the paint, they like to do a lot of those short range jump shots, and it was kind of slow developing. And our guys were just like drooling. Yeah. It was just like every opportunity they got up, and they were really close on a lot more than just 10. But and some of those blocks were just really impressive. They did block a couple of 3 shots. I mean, it was really impressive on the defensive side, but Hickory Ridge kind of set them up for some success in that regard.
So with that win, they are actually going to be playing later on tonight. So of course, the Richmond Observer will keep you up to date on all that. But going to be facing defending champion and number 2 seed Independence High School. So obviously a tough matchup. What do you expect?
Well, I'm a little excited about this, and obviously I'd love Richmond to go to Mint Hill and come away with a win. But this takes me back to my high school days because my senior year, Richmond went all the way to the state title game. They played at the Dean Smith Center at Chapel Hill, and their opponent, Independence. And they fell 74-72 in what was a much closer game than it probably should have been. Independence was kind of favoring that, but guess who was on the team that year?
Let me guess. Is he the coach?
He is the coach, head coach Donald Pettigrew. So, this is kind of a fun one, and, I'm going to enjoy to see how this one comes out. Unfortunately, I think Independence probably has a pretty heavy advantage in this one, but I don't doubt these guys. If you look at the way Richmond's rebounded this season, I think they've won 11 out of the past 13. They're on a roll, and I could totally see them pulling off the upset.
Yeah, I love how in sports things sometimes just come full circle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously going to be a tough matchup. I mean, Independence is defending champs, number 2 seed for a reason in the West. We obviously have to go to their house. And I know that, obviously I'm biased, but I feel like, when Richmond's hitting on all cylinders, I really feel like they can beat anybody in the state.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they've got to continue to win that rebound game, and that's going to be a big factor in this one because Independence has some big guys. If they can continue to get those rebounds, I think they'll do well. I would love to, and I really don't know this. I wish I did. I'd love to see what Richmond's shooting percentage is in some of these games because it's probably actually really low.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on them, but that's how good they are rebounding, that they're getting so many second, third, fourth chance points, and they're really able to pull away from a lot of these teams using that.
Yeah, and hopefully that will be the advantage that we need tonight. So, again, we'll keep you up to date on what happens up in Mint Hill. Now, real quick, I know that the girls program was not able to advance into the playoffs, were they? I don't think they.
No. They were, I think, maybe the third team out. They were this close. So.
They're right there on the bubble. But since we didn't really have a chance to discuss them last week, just real quick, Teddy Mosley, their head coach, came out and said, he thought they had a pretty good season. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think they do as well. I think last time I talked to you, I said, there's a lot of youth on this team.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to build with. I think they kind of finished about where they started. They kind of stayed consistent throughout the season, whereas other teams kind of gradually improved. And I think that's why they kind of started out so strong and then maybe kind of tapered off towards the end of the season. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to be a top contender next year in this conference. A lot of great athletes. As long as some of those young ones come back and play again. I kind of concerned because most of those young ones are also multi-sport athletes, and you
Right.
kind of get concerned: was this sport going to pull them away from basketball? We'll see how that goes, but I'm excited. I think they're going to do really well next year.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe when we were there for senior night, they're only losing 3 or 4 seniors. Something like that.
I believe it was 3. It's not many.
It's not many. So, yeah, I agree with you. Hopefully this time next year it'll be a different outcome for the Lady Raiders. Now, basketball's over for the ladies, but we're looking forward now to spring sports, even though it doesn't really feel like spring yet.
Nope.
But baseball and softball are kicking off. So let's start with baseball. First off, you've got made a graphic here for the sports show. We appreciate that's got the upcoming schedule for the Raider baseball team. So looking at this, what sticks out to you?
Well, the first thing that sticks out to me is they've only got 3 games before the conference starts, and I'm still getting used to that because in the old Southeastern Conference where there weren't as many teams, you were seeing all these great early season games that we're not getting right now. But next Tuesday, conference starts next Tuesday, so
quick.
it's just unreal, and that's at Purnell Sweat. But they played Anson. They're going to host Laney. What is that? Friday?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah, and they're going to go to Laney to play Ashley on Saturday. So that's it. That's all the warm up they get, and that's 2 Wilmington teams, which is usually pretty strong.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that's not a good preparation, but still, that's not a lot of time to get into. And when you look at Purnell Sweat, and maybe Purnell Sweat's not the team you think of when you think baseball, but when you look at Purnell Sweat and Richmond have had about, I think, 6 overtime games in the last 4 years. Or 6 extra inning games. I'm sorry, we're switching sports, aren't we? 6 extra inning games in the past 4 years. It's always a good one. I mean, when they get together, it's just always good for some reason. So, but then the very next week, 3-12, 3-13, 3-15, 2 games against Pinecrest, 1 against Terry Sanford, some of the best programs in the state right there. That is going to be a killer week, and it's really going to tell us where this team's at this year.
I agree 100%. That was the traveling to Pinecrest and then them coming to our house were obviously the 2 that stuck out to me here in the early goings. And I mean, Pinecrest, I played baseball at Richmond when I was there, and even back then that was a big rivalry. Obviously, 2 really good programs. But we had head coach Ricky Young on here a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how there's a lot of seniors on the team. They're going to depend on that leadership. But one of the things that he also pointed out is they've lost 3 really good pitchers. Drew Loving, Trey Watkins, and the third one's
Jonathan Lee.
Jonathan, yeah. The perfect game. But they're gonna kind of look at it as a by the committee type pitching squad this year. Let me just run through all the seniors here, give them some shout outs. We got Tyler Bass, Cam Caraway, Garrett Wigman, Alex Anderson, Nolan Allen, Jake Ransom, Hunter Paris, Evan Hudson, Logan Moore, Brett Young, Cy Jones, and Garrett Richardson. Obviously, all guys that were on the team last year, but
that's a whole team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole team right there. And it's all seniors.
And I don't want it to seem like they didn't do anything last year, but being a senior, it's time for all of them to step up to another level, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they want to go out on a high note. So I mean, they're going to get their best. They do have some young guys coming up to kind of help them out, but I mean, these seniors are going to be the leaders of that team this year, and I mean, they're going to carry a lot of the weight. So. And like you said, they're going to pitch by committee this year. I'm interested to see how that works. They had several games last year where they would bring somebody in, pitch for 3-4 innings, and then bring somebody in, and I'm not against that as long as it works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we saw some games not necessarily involving Richmond, but we know a lot of games last year where that completely backfired on some teams. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really easy when you've got 3 studs on your staff to just send them out there and have them pitch 6 or 7 innings. So we won't necessarily see that unless we have a couple guys step up, and you never know. I mean, one of these guys, 2 of these guys could end up being another ace. So.
I mean, it kind of started that way last year if you think about it, and then it kind of switched to that Trey Watkins rotation with the, one of the others kind of filling in every once in a while. So I mean, we'll see. Yeah.
And before we move on, one more thing about the schedule. I'm looking at your notes here. Am I reading this right? The entire season will be played before Easter break.
Yeah. So I was actually me and Kyle were planning on going to the West Brunswick tournament.
Right.
Because both baseball and softball are going to be there. They're usually not both there, and they're both going to be there this year.
That's the Diamond Invitational?
That's the Diamond Invitational. And, I was looking at it, and I was like, well, that's after Scotland. And then I realized that tournament's the last. So the Easter tournament is the last thing they're playing before the conference tournament. So
has that ever happened before? That just seems
it
odd
has
to me.
It does seem odd. It has to. I guess it's just where Easter fell this year.
Yeah, that's true. I guess Easter's going to be late this year. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was different.
Anyway, so of course, good luck to the baseball team. Now, let's talk softball because is it fair to say Richmond's a softball powerhouse? 6 championships in a row here in the SAC, and I mean, what else can you say?
And I mean, the scary thing is they're not going anywhere.
No.
I mean, there's just so much youth. It's so funny because we were having this conversation. I said, I just feel like the team's freshmen every year. I mean, every year we go out there and there's like 2 or 3 freshmen starting, and we got some great freshmen coming up this year. It's just really impressive because every time they have some go out, they just seem to have just as much talent coming in.
Yeah.
And they're a state title contender this year. I mean, they can't take that target off their backs at this point because nobody is overlooking Richmond.
So last year they were 24-5 overall, went a perfect 14-0 in the SAC. Now, I don't know if the rest of the SAC just needs to play catch up or we're just that dominant, but I think I read, I don't see it here now, but it was like 33-1 conference record, last falling to Scotland all the way back in April of 2016. I mean, that's just dominant.
Yeah, I mean, it's and like I said, it doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
No.
And you got to keep in mind, Jack Britt was the state champion last year. Richmond beat him 4 times.
Yep.
4 times last season. So, we'll see how it goes.
And I feel like it's kind of been the theme of tonight is been the weather. But again, with some of these scrimmages getting rained out, only 1 game prior to conference for softball.
Yeah, and I mean, and that game's being right now that's scheduled 100% rain that day. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that one's probably not going to get played or is at least going to get postponed. So, yeah, they're going to jump right into the conference schedule next week, most likely.
So Jack Britt's obviously a squad. Just real quick, who do you think could give Richmond some trouble inside the SAC?
I like Lumberton. I think they could give them some trouble. I don't really know a whole lot about what they come, all of what they have coming back or what they have coming up. But I know they got 3 really good athletes returning this year, including a great pitcher who is Morgan Britt, who is actually going to be going to UNCW with Savannah Lampley. So, I could see Lumberton giving them some fits. Outside of that, we're just going to have to see where everybody is. Pinecrest occasionally pops up. Scotland occasionally pops up. But I think their 2 main competition in this conference is going to be Jack Britt and Lumberton.
And last question for you. Losing Owen Bowers. You think that's going to be difficult to overcome, or do you think they're just ready to just plug somebody in?
I mean, obviously, I think it's going to be different, whatever they do. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a drop because, like I said, they have so much talent in there. Now, you can't replace an Owen Bowers, but maybe you can do something that'll help you at least stay dominant, something new. I think they're going to hurt at the bats. And probably her accuracy from catcher, because the way she could pick off runners, I don't even know how she did that half the time. But she's gone down to, we talked about her at the last show, she's gone down to Florida and she's already hit, I think, 6 home runs already in a minute. It's just, that's going to be tough to replace. But then again, you got, Aaliyah Sweeney, who's already committed to Duke, and she's a freshman. So I don't see there being a huge loss of overall talent. But again, you don't replace an Owen Bowers.
That's true. All right. Well, just like the boys baseball team, of course, nothing but good vibes and good luck to the Lady Raiders softball team. So before we go, I do want to mention, before we came on the air, the RO Sports Show's Facebook page hit 400 likes. So we really appreciate everybody that's gone online, liked, shared, watched any of our videos, done any of the polls, any of that sort of thing. So if you haven't, make sure to go on Facebook, like, share, everything I just said, comment. Make sure you stay in on the conversation because we want to bring in all the Richmond Raider sports for you.
And since we're doing numbers, because I actually got asked to do this poll after we did a poll on the last show, I actually got asked to do a poll to see which sport Raider Nation liked the best between baseball and softball. And it was softball, 53-47. So
wow.
I'm going to throw that one out there. We did that one online about a week ago, and softball won 53 to 47%. So.
I want to be surprised, but I'm really not. Look, we just got through talking about. Look how dominant they've been over the last better part of the decade.
Well, the good news is I think over about 600 people voted in that one, which was way more than the previous one. And so if you look at how close it was, it just shows you that those sports are being at least supported. So.
Absolutely. And I'd like to think that yourself, Kyle, the things that Russell and I do here, we try to help out to make sure people know that Richmond County is more than just football. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start off the Raider Wrap-Up Show. So with that being said, that's going to do it for this edition. Once again, Dion, we appreciate you joining us. Guess we'll see you right back here next week.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully we'll still be talking about boys basketball. So.
Hopefully, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. And of course, again, that's going to be tonight. So make sure to stay tuned to the Richmond Observer. We'll keep you up to track on what's going on with all of the Richmond Raider sports. I'm Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here next week.